Hey there guys, how's it going? So yeah, it's Monday morning, couple of days after the Vasyl Lomachenko Luke Campbell unification fight which took place in London this past Saturday. And yeah, I figured I'd take some time, review the fights and give you guys my perspective on things. So let's get started. So yeah, Lomachenko adds the WBC belt to his collection of belts at lightweight, further strengthening his claim as the number one fighter in that division. And he is now one fight away from becoming undisputed lightweight champion. Now, before I get to talking about the Campbell fight, what I wanted to talk about is the undercard of this fight. Of course, Lomachenko had a great win, but I want to talk about the heavyweight fight on the undercard. So, Alexander Povetkin rolls back the years and wins a unanimous decision against Hughie Fury in Hughie Fury's backyard. I want to talk about that. So, if you guys saw my prediction video for the fight, I wasn't at all confident in either guy. I particularly wasn't confident in Povetkin. Now, I thought with an accumulation of things, like Povetkin's age, with him pushing 40, I believe he turns 40. It might actually be today he turns 40. Yeah, but he was definitely just a few days away from turning 40. With him having been out of the ring for almost a year, with him having coming off a brutal, devastating knockout defeat to Anthony Joshua in a fight that really took a lot out of him, with him being overseas fighting in Hughie Fury's backyard, with him being the smaller man, the older man, the guy with more miles on his clock, he's been in more tough fights. I just wasn't confident in Povetkin's ability to win the fight, especially when you consider the type of fighter that Hughie Fury is. Hughie Fury is a extremely awkward and exploitative fighter. He's what I like to call a fake fighter. He's a guy who gets in the ring and doesn't really do a whole lot of fighting. What he does is he'll hold, lean, push, foul, and he'll just look to scrap and spoil his way through a fight and rely on the hometown judges. And that's what he tried to do here, and it didn't work. Alexander Povetkin won comfortably on all three scorecards. He won by, I think the score was 117-111 on all three scorecards. So surprisingly, he got the decision. But let me tell you guys how I saw the fight. Now, the general consensus from the commentators on all commentary teams was that the fight was competitive and fairly close, but that Povetkin clearly outworked and clearly outlanded and won the fight against Fury. Here's how I saw the fight. I disagree that it was competitive. I don't think the fight was even remotely competitive. I don't think it was even remotely close. And I know that I'm going to annoy a lot of people here. I know there's going to be people who disagree with me. I did not give Hughie Fury a single round. I didn't give him one round. And look, guys, before anybody gets annoyed at me for saying that, because I know that's not the popular narrative on the fight, I can't remember one instance in this fight. I can't remember one meaningful punch being landed by Hughie Fury. I can't remember one. The only punches he was able to land and the only punches he was able to get through with were speculative, like slappy punches. Like when the two guys would be on the inside, Hughie would clinch and he would sort of slap Povetkin behind the head, and Howard Foster would say, watch behind the head, and occasionally he'd flick that little left hand out, like all Peter Fury's fighters do. They have that thing where they'll dance around and sway at the waist, and then they'll flick the jab at their opponent, and land with the back part of the glove, which is illegal. Okay, it's an illegal backhander, but they get away with it for some reason. He would hit Povetkin round the back. He would hit Povetkin, when they were, like I said, when they're in a clinch, just with a little cuffing, slappy shot. He was landing shots on the top of the head, on the guard. But there was nothing. There was no punches from Hughie Fury in the whole fight which had an effect. He never snapped Povetkin's head back. He never hurt Povetkin. He never discouraged Povetkin. Even when Povetkin was getting tired, because Povetkin's 40 years old, even when Povetkin's legs were feeling the pace, and Povetkin's, was visibly starting to blow, was really feeling the pace of the fight, he was never deterred at all because Fury just wasn't hitting him. Like I said, Fury's a fake fighter. He's a fighter who is just 100% tactics, 100% exploitative. And it doesn't take a guy like Povetkin, a guy with his experience and with his fighting style of putting pressure on you, it doesn't take a fighter like him long to figure out that he doesn't really have a whole lot to worry about. So he didn't really need to worry about Fury's power, and he was able to take risks. And Alexander Povetkin's one of these fighters who is extremely skilled at fighting taller guys by jumping in. Usually when you jump in on an opponent, you leave yourself open for counters. And of course, against Anthony Joshua, that cost Povetkin. Same against Klitschko. But against Hughie Fury, he did the same thing that he did against David Price, in the sense that he was hanging around on the outside. He'd throw a couple of hooks to the body, and he would just jump in with a left hook or jump in with an overhand right. And he was always catching Fury on the move. Like when Fury was trying to move away, Povetkin would jump in and would snap his head back with a right hand or a left hook. And when he's inside, he would whip one of them hooks to the body. There was occasions in the fight where Fury would try and show some initiative where he's really throwing fake punches just to pretend like he's winning the round, kind of like Canelo does and Andre Ward and guys like that. They'll throw little flurries, little flashy flurries. Adrian Broner was doing it against Pacquiao, where Pacquiao would be kicking his ass, and then Broner, towards the end of the round, would throw a little quick flurry just to act as if he won the round and stuff like that. That's what Hughie Fury was trying to do in there all the way through the fight. Hughie Fury was trying to nick the rounds, trying to take the rounds with flurries rather than actual punches. But it didn't work because Povetkin kept his defense tight. He was moving his head very well. I think this was a better performance from Povetkin than either the David Price or the Anthony Joshua fights, because I think in those fights there were moments where he got a little bit careless. But in this fight, defensively he was very good. But he was cognitive of the fact that Fury wasn't as big a puncher as those guys. So I guess that contributed to why Povetkin was so good with his defense, because there was no shots that really had him under any pressure. He never really felt under pressure in the fight, so he was coming forward, throwing lots of punches, outworking, outlanding, outmuscling, and outsmarting Hughie Fury. And I thought it was a very impressive performance from Povetkin. I thought Povetkin was very impressive, despite the fact that he's so far past his prime. He's still got some fights left in him, and I wasn't expecting that. I thought that after this fight, I would be saying it's time to hang the gloves up, mate, time to retire. And part of me wants Povetkin to retire, because I don't think he can, eclipse what he did in his prime, but I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Joe Joyce or somebody like that. I know there's been rumours of that fight. Joe Joyce has called out Povetkin after the fight, and Povetkin says he wants to fight Tyson Fury. I don't really want to see that fight, to be honest. I'd rather Fury goes ahead and gets the Deontay Wilder rematch. But yeah, Joe Joyce against Povetkin, I think it'd be an excellent fight. Maybe in Russia, man. That would be a good way for him to end his career. Against a former Olympian who is undefeated but has flaws, who's quite slow. I think that's a really interesting fight. I might actually, although I think Joyce, could knock Povetkin out, he definitely has the power. I think Povetkin's the better boxer, and I would probably make him the favourite if it goes the distance. He could maybe, because he's quicker than Joyce. That's what's interesting about it. He could maybe outland and outwork Joyce on his way to a decision, similar to how he did Fury. It's a shame really when it comes to Povetkin. It's just a shame that he never got the title shot against Deontay Wilder in 2016, where he was set to fight him in Russia. But sadly, the WBC's Wilder protection program took that shot away from Povetkin and, aged him out longer. And by the time he did get the shot against Joshua, he was 39 years old and, pushing 40. So he wasn't the same fighter. He didn't have enough left. It's a shame that he didn't get the title shot when he was a bit younger, but it is what it is. He was a former world champion. I mean, he won the title against Shagayev years ago, so he could retire now. He could. It's up to him, but yeah, moving on from that fight, man. As for Hughie Fury, though, just one more brief point. Hughie Fury, I think he's in a good position. I know people are going to disagree. I think he's in a good position. Now, he's signed with Matchroom, and what that means, being signed with Matchroom, is that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to have some big domestic fights. Now, losing to Joseph Parker, losing to Kubrat Pulev, losing to Alexander Povetkin, and not looking that great against the likes of Sam Peter and Chris Norad and all that, who are obviously lower level opponents at this stage. We know that Hughie Fury is not world class, and I'm pretty sure after this fight he knows it. So, being signed with Matchroom, he has an opportunity to get big fights domestically against the likes of Dillian White, Derek Chisora, David Price, Dave Allen, Nick Webb, guys like that. He could fight these guys now. If they can do a deal with BT, he can maybe have a fight against the likes of Daniel Dubois for the British title. He can maybe fight. I don't know, man. Maybe Joe Joyce. There's a lot of British fighters, British level heavyweights that would love to fight Hughie Fury, and I think he's in a good position to get some big fights there. So, yeah, maybe he could improve. Again, he's gonna need to be more confident and let his hands go, but he's a young guy. It doesn't really. I don't really think he has the fighting mentality that somebody like Povetkin has, but if he were to fight, like I said, Derek Chisora or somebody like that, Dave Allen, those are winnable fights for him. Winnable fights. So, yeah, it is what it is. Moving on from that, I want to talk about Lomachenko, the main event. Vasyl Lomachenko with a fantastic, dominant performance over Luke Campbell. But Luke Campbell, I have to say, definitely surprised me with his heart, his grit, and his skill too, because it takes a lot of skill, really takes a lot of skill to compete with Vasyl Lomachenko. So many times we've seen guys fight Lomachenko and they just crumble under the pressure. I mean, Jorge Linares had some success against Lomachenko, won a couple of rounds, scored a knockdown, but he got overwhelmed and taken out in the 10th round. The pressure and the skill from Lomachenko was too much. We've seen supposed pound for pound level fighters like Guillermo Rigondeaux and Nicholas Walters get embarrassed and quit on their stool. We've seen tough guys like Jason Sosa get beaten into submission. Guys like Mariaga. So many fighters have been beaten up and completely demoralized by Lomachenko. But Luke Campbell, to me, made use of the advantages he had. He was at home, so of course he was much more comfortable fighting at home. He was the bigger man. He'd had about a 3-inch height advantage and like a 5.5-inch reach advantage. But he still had to use every single ounce of his energy, every single ounce of his stamina, every single ounce of his heart and his grit and his determination and his courage and his skill and his experience. He had to use all that, all that ring craft that he has just to survive against Vasyl Lomachenko. And Vasyl Lomachenko was fantastic. Scored a knockdown in the 11th round, came close to stopping Campbell on several occasions, had a few problems here and there, got caught with some right hooks, got caught with some body shots, couple of low shots too, couple of shots to the body, which seemed to stop him in his tracks, but it wasn't enough. Lomachenko's jab was fantastic. Lomachenko's jab is one of the most underrated jabs in boxing. Whether he's just throwing it speculatively like he did against Rigondeaux, or whether he's putting full power behind it like he did against Campbell. Campbell had no answers for it. He had no answer whatsoever for Lomachenko's jab. His jab was catching him all night. Lomachenko would occasionally throw a shot to the head, then to the body, or he would switch it up and throw a shot to the body, then to the head with different hands. And he's ambidextrous. He fights with both hands with equal coordination. And he's just beautiful to watch, man. Vasyl Lomachenko is a fantastic, amazing fighter. And what annoys me and kind of sickens me is that after the fight, there's people saying he was exposed. I remember Steve Bunce after the fight. Steve Bunce was saying, he said something on the radio. What was it Steve Bunce said? He said something like, we came in here expecting to see wizardry. We expected to see magic. But what we saw was an old school fight and an old school scrap, and that Lomachenko has gone down below Terence Crawford on the pound for pound list. And, you had Carl Frampton and that saying the same thing. I mean, come on to fuck, guys. I mean, to say that Terence Crawford is ahead of Lomachenko on the pound for pound list, you gotta be some kind of cock, man. I'm not even kidding. Terence Crawford is a good fighter. He is a very good fighter. There's no doubt about that. He hasn't fought anywhere near the level of world-class competition that Vasyl Lomachenko has, okay? Especially when you consider the fact that Lomachenko has only had like 14, 15 pro fights, okay? Terence Crawford's had over 30 pro fights and hasn't fought anywhere near that level of competition. Lomachenko's a 3-division world champion. He's close to becoming undisputed world champion in a division which is actually competitive, not like how 140 was, where Crawford was basically handed the belts. No, Vasyl Lomachenko is fighting elite competition. He's fighting in his opponent's backyards. He's jumping through weight divisions, doing what Manny Pacquiao did, fighting the best guy in each division. Vasyl Lomachenko, in each division he's fought in, he's been the man. He's been the guy is number one based on what you see in the ring. So what you see in the ring from Vasyl Lomachenko, you're seeing that against world-class opponents. You're not seeing that against the likes of Amir Khan and guys like that, and Yuriorkis Gamboa, who was way smaller. Lomachenko has fought guys who are smaller than him, like Rigondeaux, small, slick guys who can fight and who can box, who are very defensively skilled and very experienced amateurs. He's fought bigger guys like Nicholas Walters, who was a big puncher. He's fought guys like Sosa, who's a tough, rough brawler type. He's fought Campbell, who had a significant size advantage over him, a fellow gold medalist, okay, in his backyard. Lomachenko's winning these fights, and he's doing so convincingly. He's stopping a lot of these guys, and when he doesn't stop them, he's at least embarrassing them and putting them down. He's winning pretty much every round. I mean, I struggle to give more than 2 or 3 rounds to Luke Campbell, and that's in Luke Campbell's backyard, while Luke Campbell has a size advantage. Lomachenko is schooling these guys. Lomachenko is absolutely dominating these guys in the ring, these elite world-class fighters. But Terence Crawford's pound for pound number one, really. I mean, it makes no sense to me. Lomachenko is without a doubt pound for pound number one in my opinion, and Usyk is up there with him, but Usyk has been a bit inactive lately, so we'll have to see what he does at heavyweight. But right now, I don't think there's any question that Lomachenko is pound for pound number one. I don't think there's a question. So that's pretty much all I've got to say, guys. I think that it was a fantastic performance from Lomachenko. I think it was a workmanlike but very good performance from Povetkin, where I thought he won every round personally. Some people will disagree. That's how I saw it. I thought he won every round. I thought that Povetkin rolled back the clock, and I thought Povetkin won every round with his pressure and with his volume. And as for Lomachenko, I think Lomachenko is he's proving that he's a class above anybody in the sport right now. It's going to take a fantastic fighter to beat him. I hope that he gets the Richard Commey fight next. I know that Richard Commey is reportedly going to be fighting Teofimo Lopez, the undefeated guy who's also with Top Rank. Teofimo Lopez. I've got to be honest, guys, as interesting as that fight would be, I hope that Teofimo doesn't get that fight. And the reason why is because, and bear with me here, I know people are getting angry, but I think that Teofimo Lopez seems to me like the type who would drag the fight on, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think he would fight Lomachenko right away. I think if he won that IBF belt, he would say that Lomachenko needs to cross the street or whatever, even though they're with the same promoter, but he would come up with some bullshit or some excuse to stall the fight and drag it out and age Lomachenko out a bit and, try and get the fight when it suits him. And I just think that, if he becomes champion, it'll take longer to get the Undisputed fight. So I hope that a deal can be made, something can be worked out to get Richard Commey as Lomachenko's next opponent, maybe before the end of the year. Hopefully they can get that fight out of the way. I want Lomachenko to get that fight. I want him to get that IBF title. I want him to become Undisputed champion. So the only way he's going to do that anytime soon, in my opinion, is if he gets the Richard Commey fight. So that's how I feel about it. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and God bless.